So yesterday when I was starting the session, one of the things that I spoke about is the fact that the Work Better Club has been set up with one purpose and one purpose only. And that particular purpose is to help people kind of succeed in their professional lives, right? That is our focus. And the other thing that we spoke about right off the bat, as soon as we got started, was the fact that in the knowledge economy, in the world that we're in today, the only way to succeed professionally is through self-development, right? Because the more developed you are as far as your knowledge, skills, and attitude in the learning world, that is called KSA, knowledge, skills, attitude. The more developed you are as far as your KSA is concerned, the better chance you have of career success, and the lesser developed you are as far as your KSA is concerned, the lesser chance you have of career success, right? That's the way things have possibly always been, but at least that's the way they are in the knowledge economy or today's world. That's the way they are across the world, right? Whether you're operating in India or any other geography, the more developed your knowledge, skills, attitudes, the better chance you have of career success. Otherwise, you lower your chance of career success, right? The other thing we discussed right off the bat, I want to repeat it for a lot of the people that are new and attending this session for the first time. When we talk about the subject of self-development, we're talking about two things. We're talking about developing your hard skills, number one, which is your technical skills. And number two, we're talking about developing your soft skills. And this forum of Work Better Club revolves around developing your soft skills, behaviors, and attitudes that are required to succeed at the workplace, right? And what we've done through this particular club is we have selected the most critical skills that are required at the workplace, right? And we want to give you real practical and implementable advice on it. And that's why yesterday we had an amazing session on the subject of body language and speaking impactfully. We went overboard. I got my team was very upset with me for going overboard on time. We touched almost 2 hours yesterday, but the response was so good that we were happy to do it in a way. And today's session is on an equally important subject, if not more important subject. And some would argue the most important subject if you're working in a company, which is how do you go about managing up, or how do you go about managing your boss? So I'm sure a lot of people are inquisitive. Let's see how many people have joined. We have 92 people who have already joined us for this. Okay, so amazing. Let's get started with it. So first, these ground rules. Again, I'm sorry, a lot of people are new, so I just need to repeat them. Please read them very, very quickly so I don't need to say them out aloud. But yeah, so okay, so we're going to use, when I ask you some questions, or if you want to say something, that's when you use the chat box. If you have a specific question around something, use the Q&A section for that particular thing, right? So that's the way we divide it. All specific questions in Q&A. When I ask you some question and I need your responses for you, we're going to use the chat box for that, right? So that's broadly what we're going to do. I already see some. Please speak sometimes in Hindi also. Okay, I will try, Vipin. I will try to speak in Hindi. We have a lot of our brothers and sisters from South India that may not know Hindi, but I will try to throw a little bit of Hindi in since you made a request. Okay. Now, okay, so let's get to the subject of managing your boss well, right? And like I mentioned yesterday, after this particular session, although you're not going to possibly see your boss immediately unless you started going to office already, but after this particular session, even if you physically don't see your boss should really feel the difference when it comes to dealing with you, right? If he doesn't feel that particular difference after this particular session, I don't think this session is done a good job. I don't think you've implemented enough stuff from this thing, right? So let's first of all define what managing up actually means, right? What managing your boss actually means. Okay, so if I have to define it, this is how we can define it. Managing up involves building a positive working relationship with your boss, where you and your boss work well together. He advocates for you and is an active participant in advancing your career, right? So this is the broad kind of idea that we're talking about when it comes to managing up, right? And this is our objective. And if I have to kind of talk about the most important thing here, I would say the most important thing here is that you build a positive working relationship with your boss that helps you work well together. Because the minute you start working well with each other, the rest of the things will kind of take care of itself, right? And after you work well with each other, you guys deliver value together. Hopefully he advocates for you, gives you, better responsibilities, gives you better work, and is an active participant in advancing your career. So that's essentially what we're looking for right here. Now so this is another thought that I want to start this particular session with. Okay, so that you don't need to love your boss, but you need to be able to work with them. Right now, listen very carefully to what I'm saying. um, if you keep waiting for your bosses and leaders to become great leaders for you to perform well, that's a very, very bad career plan, right? If you're going to wait for your bosses and leaders to become amazing for you to make career progress, that's a very, very bad plan, right? A good plan is that you actually learn how to lead or manage up, which is manage your boss. You need to know how to lead and manage your subordinates. If you have people reporting into you, you need to learn how to lead and manage your colleagues, the people that you deal with. You need to learn to lead and manage your customers if you're dealing with customers and other stakeholders, right? So basically, people that tend to make progress in their career, they are people that know how to manage or lead all these different stakeholders: their own boss, their subordinates, their colleagues, their customers, so on and so forth, right? So these are the four main ones. And besides that, we often talk about vendors. You need to know, really, if you're dealing with any vendors, you need to know how to manage or lead them. And if you can more or less lead or manage these 4 or 5 stakeholders well, I think your career success is more or less guaranteed, right? Now, and most people, what they tend to do is they wait for their leaders and bosses to become great leaders and great bosses without ever taking the effort themselves to become great subordinates to their particular bosses, right? 10 years down the line, if you don't have a great career, and for those of you all who have children, and your child comes and asks you and he says, right, why didn't you have a good career? Or why didn't you reach the heights you could have probably reached in your career? A very bad response to your child would be to tell him that, oh, but I had a bad boss, right? That's a very, very bad excuse to give your child if you were to have a word with him, right? So the whole objective of this session is to tell you, stop waiting for your bosses to become great bosses, right? I think you need to work on becoming the world's best subordinate. That's what you need to try to do. And if you focus on being the world's best subordinate, you will find that your boss will end up being a better boss to you, right? And this is not some philosophy or theory or anything of that sort. This is the truth of the matter. A lot of us don't want to accept this particular truth because we want to blame somebody else. And the best person to blame in most situations are the bosses, the leaders, all these people, right? Without us really introspecting on what we need to do, right, to get stuff better. And it's very easy to do that particular thing. But I think the people that have logged on to this particular session at 10 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday are very, very, very certain that they want to change what they need to do in order to deal with their boss well. You wouldn't have logged on to this session otherwise. So I'm happy that that is the case. Okay. So we are going to start with by asking you a quick question, okay? And I want each one of you all to kind of put at least 5 points to this particular question in the chat box. And my question is very simple. Why is it important for us to manage our bosses, right? What I want to hear your view on this particular thing as to what you think. And I want each and every person to give me at least 5 points as an answer to this particular question. So I'm giving you all 2 to 3 minutes to put down your answers. Your time starts now. I don't want just one answer. I want you all to really think, because giving one answer is very easily. I want you to type out at least 4 to 5 answers as to why it's so important to manage your boss as well. Okay, I'm seeing some very, very, very good answers, very practical answers. Yeah, 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 some good answers, some good answers. Oh, some very, very good answers. Thank you very much, guys, for participating so wholeheartedly. So just a suggestion to all of y'all, in your chat box, there is something which says to, and make that to all panelists and attendees. So everybody can read your answers. A lot of people in the chat box, if you see, you're just saying your answers are coming only to the panelists, which is essentially me and Mitali, and we want your answers to go to the rest of the attendees as well. So right above your the box where you type text, there is something which says to. You can go and change that to all panelists and attendees. Wow, some very, very, very good answers, guys. Very, very, very good answers. Thank you very much. Go on, go on. I'm looking. We have 30 seconds left. Okay, guys, thank you very much for your participation. I think some of y'all have put in some amazing answers, and I think they're very in sync with what I wanna share with y'all. Right? So beautifully done. Thank you for participating. That's really nice. Okay. So now let's get into really seeing, like, what are some, why is it so important to manage your boss, right? Now, these are just some stats that I want to share with you from research done from some of the world's largest organizations. um, 3 out of 4 employees report their boss is the worst and most stressful part of the job. 3 out of 4, and this is from the American Psychological Association, right? So I'm sure that data, although I'm sure this data is the US centric, but I'm sure if you did the same research in other parts of the world, the data would be very, very similar. 65% of employees say that they take a new boss over a pay raise, right? So they prefer to have a good boss than get a pay raise. 65% of people say that. And again, this data comes from these particular sources. It's secondary research. It's not research done. This particular research has not been done by Work Better. These are credible sources where we've got this from, right? Um, Employees who have bosses they didn't like were 60% more likely to suffer a heart attack. A lot of people spoke about the stress connected to not being able to manage a boss well, right? The Harvard Business Review survey revealed 58% of people say that they trust strangers more than they trust their bosses, right? Strangers over bosses. Interesting. Okay. A study by Gallup found that 1 in 2 employees have left a job to get away from their manager at some point in their career. 1 out of 2, that's like 50%, right? Of people. So again, this is the reason why, of course, your leaders need to learn how to lead better, right, and manage their teams better. There's no doubt about that. But we can't control what our bosses are going to do with us. That's out of our control. What we can control is how we deal with our boss, and that's going to be the focus here, right? So what's the importance of managing up? So 3 points, right? um, our ability to work well with our bosses directly impacts how we feel on a day-to-day basis. It has a lot of control about on our happiness in some way, right? Or what we feel at the end of the day. Because if you have a boss that you absolutely don't feel like working with, or that you can't manage well, or on an everyday basis, that's going to make you kind of demotivated. On an everyday basis, you're going to feel like not going to work. And since we spend most of our awake time of our life, if you knock off your sleep time, and if you look at our awake time, most of our awake time goes either traveling to work or at work. And if we go to that particular workplace and we're really not happy with the one person that we need to deal with a lot, that's definitely going to impact our emotional state, right? And then more often than not, if you're not in the right emotional state in office, you bring that emotional state at home, and that starts causing differences between you and your loved ones at home, with you and your family, right? So it has a direct impact on that. Those who are successful at managing their bosses tend to have more career success in the form of promotions and raises. I don't think anyone on this particular forum, if you're real, if you're practical, if you worked for 5 to 10 years, all of you all would agree that this is the truth, right? Somebody that knows how to manage their well is much more likelier to get the promotion, the raises, than somebody that doesn't know how to manage the boss well, right? A positive working dynamic with your boss can increase your effectiveness and make your work life easier. So a lot of people have put that particular thing. When you know how to work well with the boss, you produce better results for you, for yourself. You produce better results for your boss. You produce better results for your department. You produce better results for the company that you work in. You produce better results for the customer that you work for, right? So each one of these stakeholders gets positively impacted if you know how to deal with your boss well, right? Because you will end up producing better work if that is the case. So we, in a way, what we've done, ladies and gentlemen, through these particular points is we've summarized a lot of what you have said, a lot of the input that has come from you, right? Because a lot of people spoke about it's so important to deal with the boss because you'll produce better work. Of course, that's what happens. You tend to get better results. You tend to produce better work if you have that good working dynamic with your particular boss. All those who agree, give me a big yes, a big, big yes from the chat box. Come on, come on, come on. All of y'all who agree with this, big, big, big yes. Some people are giving massive yeses. Good, good, good. And not just to all the panelists, guys. You need to change in the chat box. Go to all panelists and attendees. Yeah, I think all of us are in agreement with that. Okay. Now, very, very, very interesting point. Okay. I want all of you all to pay attention. Why do we have a negative mindset towards our bosses, right? This is such an interesting point of why we have such a negative mindset towards our bosses. You need to listen carefully, because if you don't understand this part, your core belief around this particular subject is going to be wrong. And anything that you learn on top of a wrong kind of foundational core belief is not going to really work. Most of us, the reason why we don't have a good working relationship with our bosses, because ever since we first, there are 2 or 3 big reasons for this, right? The number one reason is, ever since we first started working, we got into the workplace kind of with this negative mindset, because in every forum, and especially in the media, and by media I mean the movies, TV shows, each one of these things, the boss is always in a way portrayed as the villain. The boss is always portrayed as a negative character. You would have almost never seen a television show or a movie where the boss is really shown in a good light. That's probably 10 to 20% of the time. He's always shown as the villain because it makes a good laugh, right? So we end up literally growing with this idea that, listen, the bosses are always going to be villains, right? The bosses are always going to be wrong. The bosses are always going to be matlabi, so on and so forth, right? So we grow up with that particular thought. The other place where this thought comes from, and our negative perceptions towards bosses comes from, more often than not, our family members and our parents. Because when you were growing up, a lot of them were doing jobs, and often they came home and they would complain a lot about their bosses, right? And probably they didn't have a class like this, so they couldn't kind of attend the right classes and know how to deal with their bosses well. But they would come home and then they would complain about the bosses. And so you at home over a dinner table, when you would hear so many complaints about your boss, you had this kind of character in your mind that said, oh, this character is going to torture me. And you kind of, when you started off in your career, you always had at the back of your mind. And that, if you kind of think negatively about a certain person, it's very difficult for you to have a positive working relationship with that particular person, right? Simple logic. And we've had this kind of deep rooted suspicion towards the boss because of all these things that have happened, right? Now, the third reason why we typically have a negative mindset towards the boss is because most bosses aren't good bosses, right? They aren't good enough leaders. That's the other reason why that is. So more often than not, you'd come at a workplace and you'd find a leader or a boss that's not that inspiring, that's not that motivating, that's not that good at delegating. That is the truth of the matter, because if everybody were a good leader, or everybody were a good boss, everybody would have gone to the highest levels of management, right? But that doesn't happen. So in your career, if you work for 30-35 years, you're more likely to have bad bosses, uninspiring leaders, than you are to have very, very good bosses and inspiring leaders, right? So again, the whole perception gets fit in our head that the bosses are the villain, the bosses are negative, so on and so forth. Does that make sense to you? So this is the kind of suspicion towards the boss that ends up coming. If you are in agreement with this, type out a big yes in the chat box so that we know we're on the same page, right? So three things that I mentioned that typically starts our kind of negative attitude or negative perception towards the boss. Number one, what we've seen in the media, movies, TV, all our life. Number two, what our family members have said to us, right? When they were dealing with their bosses over a dinner table, always complaining about the bosses, saying that the bosses didn't get something right. And number three, the likelihood of us having great bosses is a minority, right? Where we're likely to have average to below average bosses through most of our career, because it's so difficult to lead a team well, right? So this kind of brings that negative attitude in our dealing with the boss, right? So what we need to do right now at this point of time is stop that mindset and bring about the change in that particular mindset, right? That's what we're going to do from this point onwards. Okay. Now this slide is very, very important, because if you don't really focus on this slide, you will kind of misunderstand what we're trying to say, right? So this is a very nice visual. So what type of bosses do we need to manage? Okay, let's get some practical advice on that. What kind of bosses that you need to manage? Now, here you will have the 10% great bosses, amazing inspirational leaders. You don't really need to put that much effort into managing these people, right? You don't need to, because they're so amazing to deal with. You have such a good working chemistry with them. They know how to get the best out of you, right? They know, they're very, very pragmatic in their way of dealing with you. Very, very kind of, they just know what to do as phenomenal leaders, right? So the great bosses don't really need managing. Be grateful that you have them if you have one of them, right? Go give them a hug and appreciate the fact that they're great bosses to you. And on the other side, you have these terrible, horrendous bosses, which is the other 10%, right? Bosses which are absolutely terrible. They're possibly borderline abusive. They don't give a damn about their people, so on and so forth. So you have the 10% that are absolutely terrible as far as bosses. And if you are unfortunate to have a boss which is in this particular category, which is possibly abusive, possibly talks down upon people all the time, so on and so forth. If you have this 10% of the boss, listen, it's very difficult to manage somebody like that, right? It's not possible to manage somebody like that. So what do? Try to get a transfer to another department, right? Or try to move under some other boss. If it's that bad, then find yourself another job, right? If you have a boss which is in this 10% category. But the truth of the matter is 80% of your bosses are going to lie in this broad category, right? Which is, some of them will be slightly nicer, some of them will be here, but these are the bosses that really need the management. And when we're taking this particular class, we are talking about how do you manage bosses that come in the 80%, right? Not the terrible ones, not the great ones that don't require that much managing, but this 80%, how do you do it? Does that make sense to you? Yes or no? Right? So I don't want to kind of take you on a fairy tale which says that, oh, this will help you in dealing with all kinds of bosses. No, there are those 10%. It's impossible to deal with, right? But I can assure you that most of your bosses will be in this 80% of category. Okay. So that's the average boss. Since great bosses are rare and most of them fall under the average category, every professional must learn how to deal with their boss well, right? That's the basic thought that we have. Okay. Now, something that I mentioned earlier, but before I do the next exercise, there's something that I want to say. If you want to get better from today onwards at dealing with your boss, you need to take 100% primary responsibility for managing your relationship with the boss, right? Instead of trying to change your boss, try to become the world's best subordinate. Okay, now let me share this particular thing with you. I told you yesterday that we have been at this. Work Better training is, although the club proposition we just launched yesterday, Work Better training has been around for 10 years. And we train on different subjects of soft skills and behavior, right? So I've been in like literally thousands of classes over the last 10 years. And irrespective of which subject we end up taking, right? I could be doing a subject on time management, goal setting, presentation, communication, it doesn't matter. Every time I open the forum up for people to ask questions, the questions that they ask around is their boss, right? They'll want to ask a question related to their boss, to which my response, and I think you like this particular response, is I typically say them, I'm like, I'm sure your boss is not the world's best boss, but are you the world's best subordinate to him? Right? Let's give that some thought. Are you the world's best subordinate to him? And he's like, I've actually never thought about it, because I was so busy trying to blame him for not being good that I really didn't think about whether I am the world's best subordinate. And then my next step is, I asked them a simple question. At some point of time, I'm going to ask you that question. I want you to think about it, where I tell them that I'm like, okay, what are the 5 possible things or 10 possible things that you need to do to become the world's best subordinate, right? What are the key areas where you're going wrong? Make a list of those 5 to 10 things. And when people actually make a list of those 5 to 10 things, they're like, listen, it's going to take me a whole lot of time to actually implement these 5 or 10 things. So what am I doing? What am I doing complaining about my boss when I have so many things to improve myself, right? Most of us have this habit where we know what our bosses need to do. We know what Narendra Modi needs to do. We know what Donald Trump needs to do. We know what everybody on the planet needs to do. But very often we don't pay attention to the areas where we need to improve ourselves. Because if you just focus on developing yourself, on improving yourself, that's going to take a lifetime and you won't have time for anything else, right? So while managing 80% of the bosses, you need to take 100% responsibility, right? You need to take 100% responsibility towards that relationship. Don't wait for him to become a great boss. Don't wait for him to change. From today onwards, your focus is going to be to become the world's best subordinate to anyone, right? That's what you need to do, because you know that that is so intricately connected to your career success. You need to do it for yourself. You need to do it for your company. You need to do it for both people. Okay. So that is the mindset with which we're going to work, the mindset of taking 100% ownership. Does that make sense to you? Yes or no? Guys, big yes if that makes sense to you. Okay, thank you very much. The enthusiasm on a Sunday morning with 155 participants on a Sunday morning is awesome. I'm loving it. Good, great. Okay, let's go on to our next exercise now. Okay, now I want you to first exercise your mind a little on a Sunday morning and tell me what are the do's and don'ts according to you of managing your boss well, right? What are the do's and don'ts according to you? I want each and every person to exercise their mind and put down any 5 to 8 points in the chat box, right? Put any 5 to 10 8 points in the chat box. And what are the do's and don'ts according to you of managing your boss well? Because we've already discussed why it's so important. We've set the context for you. We've told you how your mindset should be. But now let's get into the nitty gritties of it from this point onwards, right? So I'm waiting for your 5 to 8 points. I'm going to read the chat box till then. I mute. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. I was just saying that some very, very good, very good answers. I like something that Krishna Negi wrote. Seems to have a lot of experience in dealing with different kind of bosses, right? Good cordial relationship, learn from it, get advice. Okay, I think some very good answers. Good, congratulations, guys. I think some very, very good answers have come. By the way, at the end of this particular session, we're going to have a fun assessment for you, 10 questions on the contents of this particular thing. So please stick on for that particular fun assessment that we're going to have. When you answer that particular assessment at the end, you're going to get a very nice looking certificate from Work Better Training, saying that you've attended this particular class. You can share that particular certificate on social media. That would be great if you did that for your own good. And yeah, I think anybody that sees your CV, if you put this thing that you attended a course on how to deal with your boss well, they'll be very, very happy because they know how important this particular subject is, right? Okay, so thank you very much for your answers. Let's get into some of the do's and don'ts, right, of how you should manage well. And let me start by saying that this is a session which is like an hour and a half with Q&A and stuff like that. So it's very difficult for us to cover everything in this particular subject. But so there are lots of points that will be there besides the big three that we're discussing. There's no doubt about that, right? Because there's just so much of work, for example, that you need to do around negotiating well with your boss. And we haven't, because of the time constraints, we haven't had the time to put it in. There's so much of stuff that is around communicating much better with your particular boss that we haven't had the time to put in. However, in the Work Better Club, like you all know, there are classes that happen every weekend of the year, which take up the critical subjects of soft skills and behavior, right? They take up all the critical subjects. So it may not be covered here, but subsequently, when you attend those classes, you will get the knowledge that is required for this particular thing, right? Because a 1.5 hour subject just can't cover it. However, from our research and what we see, these are the three most important things that you need to keep in mind. They're not the only, but they're the most. Okay. Secondly, when for those of you all who end up becoming members of the Work Better Club, we have what is a member login area where the Work Better content around these particular subjects is going to be put in, right? So when you go to the tab of, how to, you currently, it's not available in the trial period, but when you go on the tab of, how to deal with your boss well, you'll get this recorded session just in case you want to watch it again. You will get there are close to, I think, 9 or 10 frequently asked questions around how to deal with bosses well, right? Like how to deal with an angry boss, how to deal with a boss that doesn't give you credit, so on and so forth. So we have 9 or 10 frequently asked questions that are answered by our experts that can help you, which is there in that world-class content, which is there, right? And then there are other curated items, the best of the best on the internet and other sources on how to deal with the boss well, that is being put up there, right? So we are going to concentrate on 3, but my suggestion is after your trial period is over, go through all this other, after you become members, go through all this other content which is there, which can really help you in dealing with your boss well, right? Okay, so let's get started with the big 3. Okay, the big 3 are, okay, and we're going to get into detail on each one of these things. Number 1, if you want to deal with your boss well, learn how to get results for your boss, right? That is number 1 thing that you need to do. Number 2, okay, and in no specific order, but in number 2, treat your boss like your number 1 customer, okay? And number 3, work hard towards making your boss successful, right? So these would be my big 3 of the many points that are there, right? So let's dive into the first one, which is get results for your boss. Okay, now listen carefully to this one. This is a very important point. If you understand the first sub point, you understand this entire topic well. When your boss gives you a task, some work, or a project, what feeling does your boss get? If your boss gets a feeling when he gives you a task, project, or some work, if your boss gets a feeling that once I have delegated this particular task to this subordinate, it will get done. There is no headache that I need to take on this particular task once is delegated, that means you are being an amazing subordinate to your boss. Your boss needs to get the feeling that you will put heaven and earth together to ensure that that particular task is done, or that project is done, and that project is done well. If you give your boss that confidence where he doesn't have the headache once he delegates a task to you, that is literally 50% of your job done as far as managing your boss. Are you getting my point of what I'm trying to say? Now, let's look at another situation. Let's look at a situation that when your boss delegates a task to you or gives a task to you, and your boss is worried about whether this task will happen or not, whether this person will do this task or not. If your boss is worried about it, that means you're not being a world-class subordinate to that particular boss. It is really that simple and easy. Okay, now for those of you all who are on this particular session that have teams, you have people that report into you, you more or less know exactly what I'm talking about, right? Because if you have 5 subordinates, or if you have 5 team members, you always have those 1 or 2 team members that when you delegate something to them, you know that that thing will get done, right? The thing will get done right quality. They'll put out something which is a good quality product. They will ensure that timelines are met. They will ensure that they do all of those things, and you have no headache. And if you have a team of 5 people, there'd probably be 2 or 3 people that when you delegate a task with them, you are often more worried than about that particular task, right? Because they are not taking 100% ownership of that particular task, right? Now, if you want to get results for your boss, this is the number one thing that you should do. When your boss delegates a task to you, you must take 100% ownership of that particular task. He must have full confidence that you will put heaven and earth together and ensure that that task is done. And that is going to happen. Your boss has no headache. And the more you do that particular thing, the better chance you have of career success. And by the way, the same thing is true while dealing with any stakeholder, right? Especially your boss, but the same thing is true while dealing with any stakeholder. Okay. Now, connected to this point of getting results and taking 100% ownership, it's very important for you to take all the tasks that your boss gives you from start to finish, right? It's very important for you to bring closure. That's the way you get results. A lot of people end up, if a lot of people end up doing tasks 80%, 90%, and don't really complete that last mile. And when that last mile is not completed, and then your boss needs to get involved in that last mile, the boss ends up feeling that he's done that particular task and he had to interfere in that particular thing. Very often, because we're not very planned and well organized, we don't take a task to the finish, right? So that's not a way in which you get results. The only way that you get results from your boss is taking each and every task from start to finish and not dropping it anywhere in the middle, in a way, right? So just to give you an example, since we're a cricket loving country, right? A very, very good example, more often than not, is somebody like Dhoni, right? Dhoni, if he has to chase 350, he doesn't take you to 330 and leave you there in most cases, right? He ensures that he gets 351. He takes you from start to finish. And that's why he's considered to be such a legendary player, right? He may not have the number of hundreds that somebody like a Virat Kohli has. However, he's somebody that's known as a finisher, right? And as soon as you're known as a finisher, you become somebody that's great in demand in the market, right? So that's something that you need to do. Take your tasks from start to finish. Now, results for your boss. Think ahead and holistically. Okay, you need to pay attention, otherwise you're going to miss this thing. The example that I often give for thinking ahead and holistically is this. Let's assume that you're in the HR department or the training department in your particular company, and your boss tells you that you know what, can you just go and block that conference room that we have in our office for the training program that's going to happen on Friday, on this Friday? So your boss just tells you that, why don't you book the kind of training room for this particular Friday? So one approach to that particular thing is to say, okay, my boss asked me to book a training room. I will just book the training room. That's about it. A better way, if you need to learn how to manage your boss well, a better way to think about it is think ahead and think holistically, which means that you need to think, okay, what am I booking the training room for, right? And then you'd come to the realization, okay, I'm booking the training room for a training program. Now, what are the other things that is possibly required for a training program? Although my boss hasn't mentioned that to me, right? What are the other things that are possibly required for a training program? And then your thought could go to probably saying, you know what, for a training program, besides blocking the conference room for it, we'd all possibly have to also get a projector. If there's a PPT that needs to be shown, we possibly need to get notepads and pens for the participants that are going to sit in the room. We possibly need to arrange for lunch and tea and coffee for all the people that are going to come for that particular thing. Are you getting my point? We probably need to, communicate with the trainer, whoever the trainer is that's going to come and train these people, and finalize that. So although your boss just asked you to book the training room, if you are a good subordinate, if you get results for your boss, you think ahead and you think holistically, and you think, okay, what are the other things that could be required for this particular training? And you proactively check with your boss. I'm not saying go and do it directly. You proactively check with your boss saying, sir, you asked me to book the training room. Would you also like me to take care of the projector and all these other factors that could help the training go smoother and better? Would you also like me to do that? And then your boss would probably be, great. You know what? Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted. Why don't you go ahead and do it? Right? So now you are thinking for your boss, you're thinking ahead, and you're making the job easier for your boss. And the minute you do that particular thing of making the job easier for him, that's when you're managing your boss well, right? That's when he becomes happy with you. So think ahead, think holistically. The other thing that revolves around thinking holistically, or also thinking about what are the possible problems, challenges that could come in that task, right? That has been given to you. So tomorrow you need to think, okay, in this particular task, what are the unforeseen kind of challenges or problems that my boss hasn't thought of, that I could probably bring to the board right at the start, right? Not from a point of view of complaining, but saying that, listen, this is what could possibly happen. So this is what we can do in order to take care of that, right? So that kind of thinking ahead of even the problems and challenges that could come up during the session, I think that's something that's very important, right? Now, in order to get results, you give your boss lesser headache, right? And if you want to give your boss lesser headache, you need to learn how to fix your own problems as far as possible. Okay, you need to pay attention and understand what I'm trying to say here. What do I mean by fix your own problems as far as possible? If a problem comes up, don't keep running to your boss for everything, right? Because that kind of puts the headache on your boss's head. If you encounter a problem, the first person to go and seek advice from, in most cases, is a trusted colleague who's possibly good at his job, right? Probably in the same department and good at his job. That's the first person you can possibly check with if you have a certain problem that comes, right? But it has to be somebody that knows how to do that. It has to be a colleague that is your well-wisher in a way. It has to be somebody that is trusted. It has to be somebody that is good at his job, right? It has to combine that thing. But please go check with your colleague first, because a lot of times without checking with our colleagues for solutions, we go to our boss, and that seems like you keep asking your boss for questions, right? On questions that you don't want to fix the problem yourself. Okay, so that's the first thing that you do. Second thing is that if, for example, your colleague cannot help you out with that thing, you need to brainstorm. And if you still can't come up to the decision of what you need to do, you could brainstorm more with them. And when you're going to your boss with a problem, also go to him with 2 to 3 possible solutions to that particular problem, right? Don't just go with the problem, go with 2 or 3 possible solutions to that problem. So your boss knows that you have not been lazy with your thinking. Your boss knows that it's not that you're not putting your best and you're just coming and asking him questions. Your boss knows that you're genuinely facing a problem, you're genuinely facing a doubt, you're genuinely facing a difficulty, and you yourself are taking the effort to work out the possible solutions, but you just need his sign off or his advice on that particular thing. Okay, so let me repeat. As far as possible, fix your own problems. For problems that are tougher than that, go to a trusted colleague for it. If even that trusted colleague doesn't help you get insight on that particular thing, go to your boss with possible solutions, at least 2 to 3 possible solutions to your problem, and say that this is my problem. These are the 2 or 3 possible solutions that I think. What is your take on it, right? And doing this thing will make the job easier for your boss, and he will in turn be extremely happy with the way you deal with him, right? Okay, and the last sub point in get results for your boss is be a master of your work, meet your business objectives, become indispensable for your boss and the organization, right? You need to really work on mastering the craft and really becoming good at what you do, ensuring that whatever objective is laid out, you go and achieve that particular objective. So you need to become, if you want to be manage your boss well, you need to get to become very, very, very result focused, result oriented. Unless that thing happens, you're not going to do well. You need to get better at mastering your own craft, right? So let me give you another example. If you're in sales, right? Let's take an example of if somebody's in sales and you have a, say, a target of doing 1,000 rupees of revenue in a month, right? Do 1,000 and 100, right? Do 10% better than what the result is that you're supposed to get your boss, right? The minute you consistently start delivering 10%, 20% more than what your target is, or more than what your business objective is, your boss is going to stop messing around with you, right? Your boss is not going to interfere in you the minute you start delivering 10, 20% more than what you're supposed to do. Now, how can you deliver 10, 20% more than what you're supposed to do? Very simply, you need to master your work. You need to upskill yourself. You need to get better. You need to be committed to your job. But the minute that happens, you are operating more or less without a boss. And there's a simple reason for that, right? Like I mentioned earlier, your boss is likely to have, say, a team of 5, 6, 8 people. And if you are one of the 2 or 3 people that is delivering 100% or more of the results, and the other 5 people are not, your boss is too busy working with those other 5 people, following up with those 5 people, and he leaves you alone in a way, saying that this guy is getting me by my results. Why should I interfere in this life? So you don't have a boss basically, right? And you're operating literally without a boss the minute you start delivering more than what is expected of you, right? The interference goes down. You become a valuable asset to the company, right? And you become a valuable asset to your boss because you are bringing results on the table. And more often than not, your boss doesn't want to let go of you then after that, right? He wants to ensure that you're part of his team, right? So point number 5 is as important as the first 4. So just to do a quick summary, okay? Number 1 point, if you want to deal with your boss well, get results for your boss, which means when your boss gives you a task, he shouldn't have a headache. He should feel this task is done. You'll put heaven and earth to bring it together. Take all your tasks from start to finish. Ensure that you don't leave tasks 80%, 90% completed where your boss needs to come and do that last bit of effort, right? Don't do that. Absolutely finish the task. Think ahead, think of holistically. Your boss may say one thing, but think of all the things around that need to get done in that particular project, right? And bring that up to your boss proactively. So even if he's not thought of it, think of all the challenges, problems as well, as far as that project is concerned, that your boss is probably not thought of. Bring that up to him in a polite way. Then your boss is happy that you are taking the headache off his head. Fix your own problems as far as possible. If not, go with 2 or 3 options, with your 2 or 3 possible solutions to your boss, right? On that. And of course, get amazing at delivering the results, which comes from mastering your work, which comes from being good at your work. If that happens, your boss stops interfering in your business as much as he should, because he's busy interfering of the business in the 4 or 5 people that are not bringing results, that are not doing their job well, right? So they become his focus. Exactly. If you're a parent with more than 1 child, say if you have 3 children, 1 child is very self-sustained, right? They'll do their homework, they'll do everything. You don't knock it out, you don't interfere with them that much. The child that's doing everything systematically, you let them be, you give them their freedom. But you possibly have one that is an absolute brat, right? That is not doing anything. You as a parent need to get more involved with that particular child, and so your focus remains. And that's exactly what happens in a boss and subordinate relationship in a way. Okay. Now, if you have any questions connected to this thing, I'm not going to take it right now. Put your questions in the question box, and I'm going to answer these questions towards the latter half, okay, of what happens. We have some good questions that have already come in. Let me check the chat box. If all of y'all are with me, please say yes, a big yes if you're clear so far. Come on, I want a bigger yes. I want yes in caps lock. Yeah, I can't hear y'all, but yeah, bigger yeses. Sneha Jain, thank you for that big yes. Lalit Singh, yes, very good. Clear, yes. Awesome. We are up to 106 people. People are joining in late. Not very good, but I'm happy that you're here on a Sunday morning. Okay. Now let's go to our next slide. Okay. This is something which is likely to be, it's likely to be slightly, people are going to get a little disturbed by this point. Treat your boss like your number one customer right now. This is a very, very important point. Like we've just focused on the three most important points here. So all of us, whether we like it or not, have to deal with a customer. Okay. That customer could be an internal customer or an external customer, because all work in its essence is dealing with some customer. There's no other thing as work. And one of the key skills that each and every one of us needs to develop is the ability to deal well with those internal or external customers. Because if you can't do that particular thing, you're very unlikely to see professional success. We have a very, very good course coming up, a good class coming up on how to be customer centric, right? It's coming, I don't know at what point in the year, but that's one class that all of y'all must attend. Now, so the people that understand customer centricity are the people that end up being prosperous, right? It's a very simple rule, right? Because all work is about dealing with a customer, internal or external customer. Therefore, people that are good at dealing with customers end up being prosperous, end up doing well in their careers. If you are not good at dealing with customers, you're very unlikely to have a good kind of career if you're not good at dealing with those internal or external customers, right? Of course, this is not a class on how to deal with the customers. However, the one thing that you need to remember is your boss is your number one customer. Go back with this particular thought. Your boss is your number one customer. That is the customer that you need to delight more than you delight any other customer. Because if you end up delighting that particular customer, you will benefit from it, he will benefit from it, the organization will benefit for it, and your external customer will benefit from it, right? So each and every stakeholder will benefit from you treating your boss like your number one customer. So if you want to take one thing, go about delighting, right? Not satisfying, go about delighting your number one customer who's your boss. Okay. Now, I had put this, first we said, give your boss a 5-star treatment. Then I said, wait, let's not call it 5-star. Let's call it 7-star, right? Let's take it 2 notches high. Let's give your boss a 7-star treatment. So for those of you all who have been to a like 5-star or 7-star hotel, you know how they treat you, right? They treat you and they make you feel so good at all points of time, right? They treat you with a lot of respect. They're very, very polite. They're very courteous. They're very prompt. They're very responsive. They do all the things that are required to delight you, right? Because you're paying that much money. That's exactly how you deal with your boss, right? Give him that particular 7-star treatment that is required, right? And this is not just your boss. Give any internal or external customer a great customer centricity, great treatment, because that is the thing that will really end up making you prosperous and good at your job. Okay. Now, the next point is understand his or her working style or preference and adapt to it. We tend to do the bang opposite of this. We expect our bosses to adapt to our working styles. No. It needs to be the bang opposite. You need to adapt to their working styles, right? And each and every one of your bosses is going to be different through your career. So you may have a certain preference, but while dealing with your boss, you need to learn how to adapt to their preferences. And we have a couple of more slides specifically on this point number 2, right? That to throw a little more light on what we mean exactly by this, right? Now, exactly like we talk about customers, that is very important to take feedback from your customers. It is very, very important for you exactly like that to take feedback from your number one customer who is your boss. Learn to take feedback from him. I wonder, because I've asked this question to so many people in the past, and I'm sure the 166 people here will give me a similar response to that. When was the last time we actually sat down and asked our boss? When was the last time we asked our boss saying, boss, tell me exactly what do I need to do better, right? Tell me exactly what I'm doing well. What do I need to do better? How can I be of better service to you, right? How can I produce better results? These very kind of pointed questions that I'm not talking about year-end appraisal, because there are lots of other factors that get involved in a year-end appraisal when feedback is given. I'm not even talking about that. I'm just talking about a regular conversation where you sit in front of him and just say, give me 3 points of feedback of what I need to do better, right? And then really sitting and listening to that particular feedback, because he's your customer, right? So you need to listen to that particular feedback. There's a very nice quote. I haven't shared a quote today. There's a very nice quote by Winston Churchill where he says, it takes courage to stand up and speak, but it also takes courage to sit down and listen, right? So when he gives you that particular feedback, have the courage to sit down and listen to that particular feedback without having any negative perceptions towards that. Because the minute you get that feedback from him, you will understand and learn how to adapt from it, right? You will learn how to do that. And then you can adapt to his particular styles or preferences. Now, a lot of times your boss may not be somebody who's very, very communicative, right? He may not be that kind of a person. It's very important for you to also look for patterns in what your boss likes and what your boss doesn't like. It's important for you to see those particular patterns. I'll give you an example of a simple pattern. Maybe your boss is somebody that loves everything to be on time, right? So if there's a meeting that happens, if the scheduled time is 9:30, he wants to ensure that everyone is in the room at 9:25, 5 minutes before it, and 9:30 sharp, he likes the meeting to start. Now that is his preference. There could be another boss that is not that much of a stickler for those things, right? He doesn't probably care about time as much as this other boss. So if you're dealing with the boss that's an absolute stickler for time, uh, please stick to the timelines, right, which are there. If you commit to him saying that you will send a document to him at 5 o'clock and he's a stickler for time, ensure that that document goes to him at 4:55. If the document doesn't go to him at 4:55 for whatever reason, call him proactively and tell him that it can't go. There could be another boss where you say 5 o'clock and it becomes 5:10. He doesn't care about it that much, right? So you need to not just take feedback from your boss, but be very aware of the patterns and your preferences, the unsaid preferences of your boss, right? Be very, very aware of that. And if you're totally observant, you will start picking a lot of them. And again, I go back to the first point. You need to, the minute you say, okay, I'm going to take responsibility to make this working relationship better, to work well with my boss because it's connected to my success, I'm going to stop blaming him. Then now I'm going to start observing him very, very closely, right? And then you'll start picking up so many things that you haven't picked up till date about his style and preference, which will be really useful for it, right? Now, fourth point is very, very important. You and your boss are not always going to agree on something. You are likely to have differing opinions on a lot of different issues, and especially if you're dealing with important projects, you guys are likely to have different views on it. Now, a lot of people get so pissed off with their boss when both of them have differing views on something, right? And then they, in a way, start protesting or don't give their fullest to the job, right? Listen, guys, if you have children, you and your child can't agree on which TV program to watch at night, right? You and your spouse can't agree on which restaurant to go to and have dinner, right? So how can you expect you and your boss to agree on everything when it comes to every project, right? When you and your own blood don't agree on like probably 90% of the things, right? So whenever you're dealing with another human being, whether it's your spouse, your child, your boss, your colleague, your friend, it doesn't matter. You are likely to have differing opinions on things. Okay. Now, in a situation where you have a differing opinion with your boss, okay, ensure that you very honestly and politely give your feedback and suggestions to him. Okay. Even if you have an alternative point of view, try to convince him of what your point of view is. If you think your point of view is right, do it politely. It's very, very important. Do it respectfully because it's your boss in the end. However, if your boss decides not to take your point of view on that particular subject, it doesn't matter. You still need to respect his decision and execute that thing like it's your own. Okay. Now, let's look at an example of cricket, since so many of us watch cricket, right? Maybe there is a match where Yuvraj Singh wanted to go one down or two down, and Dhoni felt he should go six down, right? Now, if he's going to go six down, he can't go six down saying, "Arey, but I wanted to go two down. Now I'm not going to bat well at six down." He can't take that particular approach, right? He and Dhoni could have a different opinion on where he needs to come in the batting order, but the approach needs to be of same nature, okay, I will voice my opinion that I feel I should bat at 2 down. But if my team management feel going to give my 100% to the team, and I'm not going to complain about it, I'm going to give my 100% to this, right? That needs to be the approach that we have, right? Does that make sense to you? Yes or no? I want a big yes if it makes sense to you. Yeah, correct. Somebody said it should be a debate, not an argument. Absolutely right. It should be a debate, not an argument. And when you're putting your points forward, please put it across very, very respectfully, right? That's something which is important. And in the end, if your boss doesn't agree with you, still execute it like it's your own. That's the important part of it. Okay. Now, the last point in the many points in customer centricity, please attend the class that we have later on this particular thing. But a very important point is most bosses like being proactively informed on stuff, right? So ensure that you proactively communicate to your boss on stuff and keep them in the loop on what is happening right now. How can you do it? You may not always be able to physically go and tell your boss about something or make a phone call and tell him about anything. But today, there are so many different modes of communication that are there. You can, update him on something over WhatsApp, on SMS, through email. But the more you keep your boss in the loop of what is happening, whether a project is complete, whether there are some problems, the more you keep him in the loop, the more confident he feels in you. And the more there are big gaps of communication, or if you don't proactively communicate with your boss, the more then he starts wondering what is happening, right? So people that are good at dealing with their boss, you would have noticed that they're always kind of proactively keeping their boss informed of everything. So the boss feels, ye to bahut hi acha kaam kar raha hai, no? He's always on top of what is happening, right? And he gets that particular impression, and that's very important for it, right? So like you need to keep your customers proactively informed on something, do the same thing with your boss, right? Do the exact same thing. Now, okay, adapting to, I just want all of you all to quickly, I'm not going to say much about this slide, but I'm going to give you all 30 seconds to really read this particular slide so that you'll get an idea of what we meant by adapting to your boss's work style. Okay, so this is just a slide for you to get an indication of what we meant by kind of adapting to your boss's style of doing stuff, right? Now, this is just, of course, none of us have dealt with these two people, but from whatever you read and from our research, so these are the current US president and the past US president, just for you to know how their styles were so different of kind of consuming information. So Trump's style, from whatever you read of consuming information, is by listening rather than reading, right? He doesn't like to read long reports. He doesn't like that. He'd rather just listen to the experts and take decisions based on that, right? So Trump opts to rely on oral briefings of select intelligent issues in the Oval Office rather than getting into the full written document, right? So clearly a preference of being a listener rather than a reader. Obama, on the other side, had a different style where he all the information he'd probably get that information way in advance. He'd want to read all that information, process that particular information, then bring the people to talk to him about that particular thing, right? Now, can you imagine somebody that's reporting for 8 years into Obama, and now they need to report into somebody like Trump that has a totally different style, right? Now he can't go saying, "Arey Obama," he can't keep complaining about this, right? Obama ka ye style tha. No, he needs to quickly adapt, saying, "Okay, I realize that my current boss is a listener more than a reader. My previous boss was a reader more than a listener. So okay, let me adapt to my boss, right? So let me do that." So this is just a good kind of public a public figure kind of example for you to relate to this particular topic. Okay, now the third and the last point in this subject is make your boss successful. Okay, very important topic. Understand and promote your boss's goals and priorities. Be mindful of the fact that his priorities may change, shift depending on the business need, right? Now, from today onwards, if you want to start dealing with your boss well, keep your focus on how do I make my boss successful? How do I make my boss look good in front of his stakeholders? How do I make my boss's life easier? How do I take the headache of his particular head? Right? This needs to be your focus, right? And the minute you start thinking more and more and more about how do I make my boss become successful, okay, you will realize that automatically in 9 out of 10 cases, with the 80% of bosses that we're speaking about, the minute you start thinking more in terms of how do I make this person become successful, that person automatically in 8 out of 10 cases will start thinking, okay, this guy really wants to make me look good in front of my stakeholders. What can I do for this person that will make him successful? More often than not, we don't do that. We're so busy thinking about us, ourselves. We don't think about our number one customer, that's the boss, and how we can make him more successful. Okay. Now, I'm going to go back to point number one. Understand and promote your boss's goals and priorities. You know, all of y'all would have come across this situation that would have happened to you where your boss gives you a certain project, right? And then you're in the middle of working on that particular project. And then all of a sudden something else comes up. And then he says, oh, you know, I'm sorry, now you need to do this. And then you start doing this. And then your boss says, then on come Friday, something else comes up. And you see, he says, oh, now you need to do this. And what happens more often than not is we tend to get very, very frustrated, and we think, oh, my boss is so incompetent, right? Well, he told me that on Monday this was a priority, now this has happened, that has happened. You need to realize that when your boss is giving you some work, it often, and those things keep changing. It changes because the priorities in business keep shifting, right? And the minute those priorities in business, what his boss tells him, what his super boss tells him, those priorities keep changing, and in turn they come down to you, right? So I know it can be frustrating, but because that happens, don't ensure that you have a negative approach or attitude towards your particular boss. Understand your boss's goals and priorities, but also understand that given the business realities, those priorities will keep shifting. The priorities will keep changing. So don't waste your time getting frustrated about them. Ensure that you quickly adapt to them, because the minute you get frustrated about those changing priorities, number one, it'll be reflective. Your boss will see that particular thing. Number two, the minute you're frustrated about it, you won't give it your best, right? Whether you realize it or not, you won't give it your best, and that will kind of impact the quality of the output that you give there, right? So you need to be very, very adept, very, very flexible to your boss's changing priorities, okay? And the shifts that happen there. Make your boss's life easier. We've discussed that. Make your boss look good in front of his stakeholders. At all points of time, think how you can promote him. And remember, okay, this is the last point, is a good point. You and your boss are on the same team. Don't try to compete with your boss. Think of your relationship as a partnership while acknowledging the power difference. Okay. It's when we call it a partnership, it's not a partnership of equals in a way, right? Because yes, he is your superior, no doubt. But our approach needs to be that we are a team facing off against the world. So the example that I often give people, y'all are like tennis players, but y'all are not playing against each other. Y'all are doubles partners in a way, playing against everybody else, right? So you and your boss are doubles partners. Y'all are not playing against each other. So stop trying to compete with your boss, right? That's not a very, very good approach of trying to compete with him. Okay, so in summary, these are some of the points that I'd like to share with you, right? Since great bosses are rare and most of them fall under the average category, every professional must know how to deal with every type of a boss. Think about your relationship with your boss like a partnership and recognize the shared objectives. Come to an agreement about mutual expectations, key responsibility, standards of performance, and measures of success. Ask your boss to share his or her own goals and objectives with you. Assist them in meeting their performance commitments to the organization, and let your boss know what you can do for him or her. Okay. These are some other points which are good summary points. Okay, you can read them yourself. Provide information to your boss in accordance with their preferred style. Deliver the results your boss requires and needs. Exceed those requirements and needs whenever possible. Don't rely on your boss to fix everything for you. Go to the boss only when you have not managed to resolve your issue. Treat your boss like your number one customer. Give him a 7-star treatment. Be open, receptive to feedback rather than being defensive. use your boss's time well, do not take up his or her resources with trivial matters, and advise him on your suggestions, feedback, whatever you have. But if it doesn't work, learn to take his particular orders and operate with that and execute like it's your own. Okay. Now, guys, thank you very much for being so attentive. Now we're going to come to some of the questions that you have. Please go to the question box, okay, question answer box, and put your questions there if required. Okay. Now, the first question that I'm going to answer here is by Amit Ghosh, where he asks me how to handle the situation when your boss also knows that the boss is making a wrong judgment or decision. Okay. I'm not clear on that question because I'm not sure whether you mean the boss is clear that he's, or you are clear on whether it's a wrong judgment. Right now, let's take a situation where your boss actually tells you to do something and you know that it is unethical to do something or immoral to do something, right? Or it is strictly against company policies. That is not the time where you listen to what your boss has to say and obey it if it's unethical, immoral, or clearly against your company policies, right? That is not the time when you kind of listen or obey what your boss says. That is the time where you need to put your foot down. You need to tell your boss that this is something which I cannot do. But understand that it needs to be unethical, immoral, or clearly against your company policies. I can assure you that these situations are very, 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 very rare, right? Are very, very rare. Now, if you say everything is against your morals or everything is against your ethics, that is a problem. It needs to be something which is clearly about cheating somebody, clear lying, clear deceit, you know, stuff like that, which is ethical or immoral. Those are the things that where you can put your foot down and politely tell the boss that you're not comfortable doing that. In most situations, what tends to happen is that it's a differing opinion that you have with your boss, right? That you think in a certain direction, your boss thinks in a certain other direction, but you are pretty sure that his judgment is wrong. Now, if you are 100% sure about this, please be very, very vocal. Please be very persuasive. Please try to influence him to the best of your ability to tell him that this particular decision is going to be detrimental to me, to you, to the department, to the company. You need to try to use your influence. However, in a case where he still doesn't agree with you, you have to respect the fact that he is the reporting authority to you and you'll have to execute that particular thing, right? But try to make a very, very, very good case for yourself, for your point of view before that. The problem, Amit, that happens with most people is most people aren't very good at making persuasive arguments. People are not very good at influencing their boss in the right way, right? They kind of feel that I'm just going to say one thing and I'm right, and so my boss should understand. No, it's very important to build your ability to influence, negotiate well with your boss, and persuade him. And another word that's given to it is very important for you to be able to sell your ideas to your boss in a way, right? And all of us must learn how to do that. Now, I'm plugging in this particular course because it's important to you. Through the year, we have multiple kind of courses exactly like this, which talks about how do you structure your communication a lot better while dealing with all stakeholders. We have a specific course on how do you influence people. We have a specific course on how do you negotiate well with people, right? So all those things will also help you while dealing with your most important stakeholder, that's the boss, right? So Amit, that's an answer to your question. Namrata Mishra, let me read your question. Namrata, so Namrata's question is, being an HR is hard sometimes to convince both, and she's written in brackets, the boss and colleague at the same time for any particular topic. What strategy should we have, right? So that's a very, very good question. I think there's a 2-point or a 3-point answer that I'd like to give here. I think life generally, and especially life within larger organizations, is about finding win-win between all stakeholders, right? Now, when you're talking about win-win between stakeholders, you're not going to get a perfect win for your boss, and neither are you going to be able to get a perfect win for your colleagues. So a word which is often considered as a bad word in India, or a negative word, is the word of compromise in a way, right? So you must learn how to create win-win. You must learn how to find the middle ground towards it, and you must learn how to compromise, right? There's a very nice quote that says wisdom is knowing what to ignore, right? So certain things you just need to learn how to ignore in a way. Okay, but that's the way that you kind of try to find the middle ground between these things, right? And be a good negotiator there. So try to do that as far as possible. And also, I think a very important topic, the answer to most of these questions is going to revolve around this topic. Get extremely good at communicating your thoughts in a structured way, right? From my experience of 10 years, that is something people just don't know how to do, is to make a good persuasive argument towards something. They don't know how to influence and persuade people. That's a critical skill that each one of y'all need, guys. And thank God for Work Better Club. We're here to help you on that particular thing and get you good at it. So Namrata, very good question. Okay. Saurabh Sharma, what a good question. What if the boss raises the target in the middle when we are achieving our day-to-day targets? That's a good question. I wish I had a good answer for that, Saurabh. I don't have a good answer for it. Okay. Now, is it ideal if your organization or boss raises the target in the middle of the year? No, it is not ideal, right? There's no doubt about it. Once the certain parameter is set at the start of the year, it's good if that particular parameter is followed. There is no doubt about that, Saurabh. I am in full agreement with you. However, the key decision that you need to make, that you need to make is, are you going to spend your time complaining, whining about this particular situation, or are you going to spend your time thinking about how you can possibly go about achieving those new targets that have been set? I can assure you that while complaining and whining about that may seem fun, somewhat of a relief in the short term when you're complaining and whining about this with your colleagues, may seem like a relief in some way, but that's not going to help you in, if you want to remove your frustrations temporarily, you can do that along with your colleague. It's not really going to help you. It's not an ideal situation, but we don't always get ideal situations, right? So after you're done with a little bit of complaining or whining, get straight into the second part of saying, now that this is the new reality of this situation, what do I do about this particular new reality? How do I now go about achieving this particular target? And I can assure you of one thing. There's a very nice quote that says, rough seas make good sailors, right? Rough seas make good sailors. Every time you are thrown into a challenging situation, whether it is something which is done by your boss, customer, or any other thing, and you learn how to swim out of that particular situation, it trains you and it builds your confidence to more or less take on any other situation that comes your way, right? So try to give that thing a little bit of a positive spin. That is very, very important for you to do that, right? And the third thing, Saurabh, what I can share about this particular thing, this is a tendency all of us have, right? When something happens within our organization that we are not that happy with, whether it's done by your boss, super boss, or it's a company policy, right, which comes possibly straight from the top, we spend a lot of our time complaining and talking about this to people that can do nothing about it. So we'll tell our colleagues, complain to them that can do nothing about it. We tell our spouses at home about the company policy. She can't do anything about it. You'll tell your friends in your building about it who can't do anything about it. You'll tell all the people that can't do anything about it, but you don't really take up this particular matter with the people that can really do something about it, right? So if you think that you've been aggrieved in some way or something is not right, try to address it in a polite, respectful fashion with the people that can really do something about it, right? And stop talking to all the people that can't do anything about that particular thing. Okay. Now, next question. I think Gupta, I've answered that question in some way. Akib Mohammed, good question. In my case, I'm the only subordinate under him. That's never an ideal situation, right? Where you're the only subordinate to a boss. It's good that he has a team of at least 3 to 5 people so that stuff is divided. If he gives me a lot of work or less time, what do you do? Okay, it's a very, very good question. Now, when your boss gives you, say, a certain task or certain responsibility, and say he comes the next day and he gives you something else, and you know that that can't fit within the timeline that has been given to you, Akib, what you can do is you can get back to your boss and in a way ask him to help prioritize, right? So you tell him that, listen, boss, you gave me these two things and you also added these two things. I cannot complete all these four things by this evening. However, tell me out of these four things, what are the top two things that you really want to be completed by this evening? Because I will ensure that I get them completed, given that we have limited time to complete it. So when your boss puts a lot of things on your plate, sometimes you are not clear on what the priorities need to be. Ensure that you speak to your boss and get clarity on him, saying that it's not going to get completed, but I want to understand what are the two things that need to get completed so that I can work according to your priorities, your objectives, your goals as far as what needs to be done, right? So that's the only way to kind of manage it. Have those conversations with him and align yourself on his priorities while making it clear that those tasks cannot be completed within the given timeline, right? So that's what you need to say. Okay. Amulya Pati, how to say no to the boss? Oh, good question. How to say no to the boss? Amulya, as far as possible, don't say no. Let's start with that, because no boss is ever going to like somebody saying no to them. So as far as possible, don't say no. Try to say a yes, because when we look at your boss being your number one customer, giving them a 7-star treatment, more often than not, you want to hear a yes. Okay, not a no. However, in situations where you have to say a no to your boss, please attend our class. Work Better Club has an entire class just dedicated to the subject of how to say no to people, right? All stakeholders, it doesn't matter whether it's your boss or not. So please attend that class where you'll get that input on that particular subject, right? If you don't have time till then, once if you become a member, there's lots of reading material on this subject that we have on our platform, which is amazing. However, since you asked this question here, and I'm sure a lot of people will have a question here, I will just share two things that you can do, right? So if you're the way to say no to your boss is number one, try to understand what he's trying to say and tell him that you understood what he's trying to say, right? So what do I mean by that? So you could say something like, boss, I understand that this job needs to happen by tomorrow because it's extremely important from this point of view. So really understand, acknowledge to him that you kind of get what his problem is, and say that out aloud, exactly like this. You say, I understand that this is the problem that you want, and this is the reason why I want that problem to be there. So first, give him a sense that you understand. That's number one. Number two, after you understand that, explain to him, give him a proactive explanation as to why you can't do that particular thing, right? Don't wait for him to ask you why. Proactively explain to him why you can't do a certain thing. And number three thing that you can do in saying no is then give him an alternative. Since I can't do this, what is it that I can do for you, right? It could be something as simple as, I know you want me to do this for you today. I cannot do this today for you for this reason. However, what I will do is by tomorrow evening, I will ensure that this is done. So you give him an alternative of time. Maybe you give him an alternative solution around something, right? It's like, for example, when you go to a 5-star hotel, right? And if you ask for a Coke, and let's assume that they don't have a Coke, right? So they will say that, ma'am, I'm really sorry, we don't have a Coke. Can I present you with a Diet Coke or a Diet Pepsi? Right? Can I give you that? If you say, no, I don't want that, they say, can I give you an orange juice? Then what can I give you? So they keep presenting alternatives for you. So then your boss or whoever that customer knows that you really want to help. You're not just saying no because you're lazy in any way, right? You're saying no because there is something genuine. So number one, just the 3 points that I shared with you on how to say no to your boss. Number one, acknowledge your boss's problem. Communicate to him that you understand what the situation is and what the problem is, because often your boss may think that you don't understand it. That's why you're saying no. Number two, give him a proactive explanation of why you're saying no to him. And number three, try giving him some kind of an alternative, which will be a solution for him, right? So if you do, I recommend that you attend our detailed class on it, because we can get into a lot more details on it. But for now, I think this input is good. And if you become a member, go to our dashboard and look at the content around this subject. We have a lot of interesting stuff here. Okay. When you, Tripathi, when your boss feels you are more skillful or competent, then he feels insecure. You're right. You have a lot of bosses. If you're doing a phenomenal job, there is every chance that your boss is going to feel in a way threatened. Your boss is going to be insecure. There is no doubt about that. But I can also assure you that a lot of it is your doing, right? Because currently, in your current situation, you haven't really treated your boss like a partner. Like we said, you haven't really looked at how can I make him more successful. You haven't done that enough, right? And the more you focus from today, whatever your competence or skill levels are, the more you focus on how do I make that person, irrespective of what his competence level, how do I make that person successful, how do I make that person look good, he will start partnering with you in a lot better way. And of course, I've started this workshop by saying, if your boss is in the 10% of bosses that is absolutely terrible, right, that you can't deal with, try to get a transfer, try to get a new job, try to do something else, right? Nobody is kind of chained you to your current setting, right? You need to remember that nobody's chained you to your current setting. If things are so bad, you're not a tree. You can always just move and do something else, right? The minute that the whole fact that you stuck to this particular setting is because there may be some problem with your boss, but overall you like your job, you like what you're doing. So there could be one element that is wrong with it, but overall you like it. That's why you're in your current setting. But if he's one of those 10%, you need to look for other alternatives. However, try to make your boss look good from today, right? Whatever his skill level is, and you see that that will help you a lot. Okay. um Honey, I have made this clear, right? So if somebody is absolutely disrespectful to you, borderline abusive, keeps ill treating you, he's possibly amongst those 10% absolute terrible bosses that you can't do anything about, right? So you need to look for alternatives, and you need to really think, if things are so bad, why have you stuck to your current setting, right? Because like I mentioned just now, there could be a host of other advantages that that particular setting brings you, right? So now you're balancing off and you're saying, okay, this is bad, but all these things are good, and that's why I'm sticking to this particular setting, right? So that's what you look at. However, I can tell you that now that you've learned a few things from this particular session, honey, I would recommend that over the next 3 months, you really try to put all the things that we've discussed into action and see whether there is a change in the way your relationship with your boss is, right? Because I'm sure if you actually put these things into practice, and of course taking 100% responsibility, where you don't wait for your boss to change, but you change, right? If you do that particular thing, I am absolutely sure you will start seeing a change in your relationship. In spite of that, if there's no change in your working relationship, right? This is a democracy. There are loads of options which are there. Okay, my team is bringing my notice to a chat. What is the question? Okay, I think I've answered that question somewhere. Okay. Yeah, so Maya C has a very, very good question. How to treat your boss like your number one customer without going overboard in a genuine manner? Maya, simple answer. Just be genuine with your boss, right? Don't try to, what is called, don't try to suck up to your boss. In Hindi, usko bolte hai, chaatne ki zarurat nahi hai, right? Even if it's your number one customer, you don't need to indulge in flattery for no reason. You don't need to indulge in any of those things, right? Treat your boss in a genuine, respectful way, in a polite way, in a courteous way. That is what we would expect you to do, not just with your boss, but in any of the stakeholders that you're dealing with at the workplace. You don't need to go overboard. If you look at our entire section, and you'll get a recording of this particular video as well, if you look at this entire section of what we've covered, the entire section revolves around, nothing is around flattery, right? It's all around genuinely having a different mindset towards it. Okay. Okay, now I have there are loads of very, very, very good questions, but we are at 11:30, and yesterday of course we extended the session by half an hour. I've been warned not to do that again, but thank you very much for asking lots of very, very good questions connected to this thing. For a lot of the questions that have not been answered because of the limitation of time, I do the group coaching calls. You can check the schedule. I do the group coaching calls where we have 1.5 hours where we are just going to answer questions, right? And those questions can be about any and all the subjects that you have. It's just a focus session on that. So because we have 150 people joining, it's impossible for me to take every question that is there. But I hope this session has been useful to you. Okay, now to end the session, what I want you to do is in your chat box, put together your 3 biggest takeaways from this particular session, the 3 things that you are going to start applying and implementing from today, right? Write 1, 2, 3 and put your 3 biggest takeaways from this particular session. I'm going to wait and I'm going to check them out, because we keep talking about this thing. Just knowing these things aren't enough. It's important for you to actually implement them. It's actually important for you to put this in your action. Otherwise, it's like going to the gym, paying the membership, not working out, and then wondering why you're not getting fit, right? So implementation and execution is the key. Yeah, so Mitali, the group coaching call this month is on the 28th of June at 10 a.m. So please join in. Thank you very much, Mitali. You're a lifesaver. Think from, they already talked about think from boss. I think she meant boss, not boss. Okay. Yeah. So put your 1, 2, 3 in the box so that we're clear on what your biggest takeaways are. Yeah. No, I've not put myself. Oh.
It's the same question I showed you.
Praveen, I think you put on the, you really want your question to be answered. I will answer that question after I give the assessment. I'll stay on and I will answer your question. So don't worry about it, Praveen. Okay. We'll answer your question. I just want this part to get over. Okay. Okay, so the last 2 things, thank you very much, guys. I'm so glad on the takeaways that you have from this particular session. It seems like we're on the same page as far as what to do. I'm so sorry that I can't answer all your questions today, but like Mitali's put it, on the 28th, we have a group coaching call. Please come for that. I'd love if you all are there and we can kind of have further this discussion. I'm going to, of course, Praveen has put a question multiple times, so I'm going to answer that particular question. Okay. So before we leave and we enjoy the rest of our Sunday with our friends and family, with doing all the social distancing that we need to do. Okay. 2 last things which are left. Number 1, I'm going to send you all a poll, which is the feedback for this particular session. So please answer that. And Mitali, please share the assessment link in the chat box. So Mitali is going to share the assessment link. If you take that assessment, it's a quick, fun, just like a recap session. It's a quick 10 questions only. You answer any 7 right, and you automatically get a certificate from Work Better Training saying that you've been certified on this particular subject, that you attended this particular class. It's a nice certificate. Share that on social media so people are inspired to develop themselves as much as you are. I'm going to launch the poll now. The assessment has been shared by Mitali. So just one of my team members has asked me to tell you that the cheat sheet, somebody's asking for the cheat sheet from yesterday's session. A cheat sheet is nothing but a 1-pager which summarizes the entire subject. That will be sent to you subsequently. So you will get that through email. Don't worry about it. You'll get it for this session and the previous session. There's a certain kind of pattern in which it will come to you. So it will be there. Secondly, once the dashboard is ready, and the trial membership is over, when you go into your members login, you will get all this content per subject which will be there, right, for you to go and check out. So that's an excellent resource. Like I said, 1.5 hours is not enough to talk about such an important subject as managing your boss. So there are lots of resources that have been put there that can really help you kind of get better at this critical subject that really determines professional success, right? Yeah, so please ensure that you do that. And for those of y'all, this initiative that we've taken, like I mentioned from the start, is something which is going to help you improve your soft skills and behavior. If you worked enough, you know these are some of the most critical things that we are not taught, unfortunately, right? We so wish that we were taught all these things in school, in college, because these are the things that really matter to us, but they're not. And but the Work Better Club is going to take that responsibility. We're going to do that for you. We're going to help you through your professional success, right? So that's what we want to do. Yes, thank you very much. Now, Mitali has got a few announcements. Just look at what she's reading. Use your registered email ID. Yeah, do that. Okay, so now what was Praveen's question? I'm going to go back and answer that one question. And with that, we're going to end the day and go back to your friends and family. Okay. Yes, what was the question? Thank you. Thank you, Sureka. Nitin, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I'm trying to read the question. I'll see if I... Pradeep, yeah, sorry, it's Pradeep, not Praveen. Just keep it here. If your the question was if your boss gives a task to complete, after sometimes he gives another task to complete, and the task is a timeline. So I think I gave some input on that, right? Where I said if you have multiple tasks that are given to you back to back, and this, of course, I'm assuming that you are doing the job effectively, efficiently, and you're not taking 15 minutes to do a 5-minute job, right? Because a lot of people, because they're not effective, they're very distracted at the workplace, they're not focusing, they're busy complaining, they take 15 minutes to do what is a 5-minute job, right? Or what your other colleagues could be doing in 5 minutes. However, if your other colleagues do something in 5 minutes, you are doing something in 5 minutes, yet the load is too much. I told you, please ensure that you go to your boss and tell him that, listen, I know that you have certain priorities. We cannot complete these things within your given timeline. Please tell me your order of priority. What do you want completed first, second, third, fourth, right? However, through this entire process, just remember, do not get frustrated at your boss's changing priorities, because often your boss also doesn't have a choice, right? It's his boss that is giving him that thing, or the management that's giving him those particular things. So he doesn't have a choice in that particular thing, but you can have that particular conversation with your boss and ensure that the priorities are clear, right? um, Okay, one more question. Naseem, if boss is a late responder all the time, how to make him proactive? Again, it's a difficult situation if your boss responds to you late at all points of time, but very politely with a nice puppy face, constantly try to remind him through email, by catching him, when he's in a good mood, in a way, by, sending him a message, which is a reminder. You need to constantly but very politely keep following up with him so that he delivers what he needs to do, right? Is that an ideal situation, Naseem? It's not, but we don't live in an ideal world, right? So we can't keep looking at what our boss needs to change. It's time we took more responsibility for our actions. It's time we took more responsibility for our own careers, right? Because to end with, the last thing that I want to say to you before I sign off is, 10 years down the line, if you don't have a great career, okay, and you are busy blaming your boss is not at fault, you have been at fault, right? If you don't have a great career, because it's a terrible excuse to give, saying I didn't make progress because of my boss. If your boss is in the 10%, that's terrible, make the change that's required. But if he's in that 80%, it is your job to become the world's best subordinate. It is your job to learn how to deal with the boss well and change what you do. Okay. Yeah, I always end with a quote. So let me end with this one. This is one of my favorites. It's a very nice quote from Gautam Buddha. So Gautam Buddha says, the best time to plant a tree is 20 years back. The next best time to do it is right now, right? So the best time to have known a lot of these things is a long time back, but the next best time to know these things is right now, right? So now that you are equipped with some of this knowledge, please put it into action and please change your fortunes around this thing. Okay. Thank you very much, guys. Bye-bye. Have a good day. See you soon. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Can you, what screen?